Hey guys, Dr. Nick here again with Health Launch. I want to talk to you about a big buzzword in health today, and that is stress. And today we're going to talk about the 3 best ways to cope with the damaging effects of stress. Okay, so some crazy stats about stress. Stress actually accounts for half of the work days that are lost every year from people just not showing up from work. That's crazy. Stress can increase your risk of heart disease, it increases blood pressure, increases your risk of stroke, and it also breaks down muscle proteins. And so people can actually see their muscles get smaller when they're in a chronic state of stress. Stress can be both good and bad, but when we're under a chronic state of stress and we are producing stress hormones for long periods of time, and these stress hormones are called glucocorticoids, it puts our body in an unhealthy state. Now, stress affects 3 major areas in the body. That number 1 is our nervous system, the second is our endocrine system, and the third is our immune system. All 3 of these are vital, but it's important to know that your nervous system is what manages the other 2. And so when we're talking about stress, there's something that you need to understand, and that is how your autonomic nervous system, or that part of your nervous system that you don't have control over, how it plays a role physiologically in our body when we're under a state of stress. Underneath your autonomic nervous system, there's 2 major parts. There's your sympathetic nervous system and your parasympathetic nervous system. Have you ever been walking through your house and somebody jumped out and scared you? Your heart rate went up, the hair on your skin stood up, and it almost felt like your blood pressure raised. You could hear your heartbeat in your head. That's your sympathetic nervous system taking over. It's also called your fight or flight nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is when you're under a state of rest and digest. So after that big Thanksgiving dinner and you're watching football, you start to doze off and fall asleep. Grandpa's over there asleep. It's because we're now in a parasympathetic state and our body is resting. When we are under a chronic state of stress, our sympathetic nervous system is on overload. Now, as part of our endocrine system, when we're under a chronic state of stress, we start to produce glucocorticoids. And the most important, or the most popular, I would say, is called cortisol. Cortisol has been related to increased belly fat. Your abdominal fat actually is more sensitive to cortisol, and so people who are under a chronic state of stress tend to carry more belly fat. When our body has cortisol in the blood for long periods of time, it also lowers our immune system and can actually affect memory. There's been studies that show people that have higher levels of glucocorticoids for long periods of time have cognitive issues, so they don't have as good a memory. Now, we want to get into talking about, well, how do we get ourselves out of this chronic state of stress? How do we reduce these damaging effects to our nervous system, our endocrine system, and our immune system? If your immune system is affected, then we're going to be sick more often. You're not going to be able to achieve the health goals that you want. And so the best way to start coping with the damaging effects of stress is to exercise. We've all heard we need to exercise more. But why? It's not just about the aesthetics of looking better. It's actually internally, physiologically, we need to exercise to burn off the stress. There was a great book written by Robert Sapolsky called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And the whole premise is, when an animal in the wild is going to be attacked by another animal, it physiologically goes under a state of stress. But what does a zebra do? It doesn't sit there. It runs for its life. And so it burns off those stress hormones and it gets rid of the adrenaline and the cortisol. But what do we do when we're under a stressful state because we've got deadlines at work or we're having to sit too long at a computer? We get all this compound stress and then we never burn it off, and that's when we become sick. So exercise is critical to helping us burn off those stress hormones, reduce the amount of belly fat that we have, and help us live a generally healthier life. The second way to cope with stress is by breathing. When we actually do what's called belly breathing, or it's also known as diaphragmatic breathing, we get higher levels of oxygen into the blood, and it stimulates our nervous system to actually go into that parasympathetic state. And so a great exercise, in addition to working out, is when you get home, is do breathing exercises. Lying on your back, making sure that your spine's in a neutral position, bend the knees, put the feet flat on the floor, and then take a nice deep breath down into the belly. Most of us, when we're stressed, we tend to take a hunched posture, and when we do that, we use accessory breathing muscles. So we see our shoulders going up and down, or we see muscles in our neck being used when we breathe. And so if we learn how to breathe into our abdomen and actually slow our breathing down, it will help to reduce some of the damaging effects that stress puts on the body. And lastly, what I want to talk about is sleep. Globally, people are not sleeping as much as they should. And some people say, well, you should sleep 6 hours a night, or you should sleep 9 hours a night. People need different amounts of sleep depending on their activities. Athletes sometimes will sleep 12 hours a night. People who have a more sedentary lifestyle maybe need 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. When you're asleep, your body starts to restore its dopamine levels. And dopamine is also known as our happy hormone. So if you're under a chronic state of stress and you're not getting enough sleep, you're not getting enough dopamine. And if you're not having enough dopamine, then you're also not going to be pleasant when you're stressed out. That's why most people are irritated and agitated. One way to tell if you are low on dopamine because you're not getting enough sleep is if your hands are jittery. Because people who have Parkinson's disease tend to not have dopamine, and so they tend to shake. And so if you're having signs of being shaky, you may not be getting enough sleep. I know these are 3 simple tips to help you avoid the damaging effects of stress, but we have to start exercising more to start burning off those stress hormones and to stay healthy. We've got to start breathing deeper so that we can put ourselves into a parasympathetic state and allow our body to get the rest it needs. That alone will help us sleep better at night. And by sleeping better at night, our body gets the rest that it needs. We get our happy hormones so that we wake up ready to take on the day and deal with the next day's stress. I understand when talking about stress, there's a lot more detail that we can go into, and we will. We're going to continue to bring you a lot of high-value content to help you feel better, heal better, and live better. But if you love the content in this video, make sure you click the thumbs up button there so that you like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can continue to get high-quality content coming your way.